Welcome to the Frequency Labyrinth. I am Adrienne McDonald, your host. This podcast is for you if you're done with surface level self-help and ready for something deeper and actually transformative. Around here, we work with ancient wisdom, human design, gene keys, and shamanic practices, not as knowledge to collect, but as tools to live by. This isn't about one size fits all. It's about learning to work with your energy, your design, and your life. This is about integration and embodiment. We go deep here with ancient wisdom, practical integration, so that you can develop ironclad self-trust. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time. We are going to get into the energetic mix of September. Today, I'm going to go through the human design sun transit gates and a few highlights of the astrological outlook for September. Now, September just doesn't roll in. It is opening the door to eclipse season, where the light itself disappears, and eclipse season is not business as usual. There are sky interruptions. This is the moment when the regular clock of the cosmos breaks down and something outside of our control a little bit takes over. And every ancient culture knew this. Ancient astrologers wrote of eclipses as omens, actually, of kings falling, as regimes crumbling, the collective shadow stepping out of hiding. Psychologically, eclipses are thought of more as thresholds. They pull us into the liminal space where the unconscious rises and sometimes rewrites the script. But that's all necessary. I don't want you to think of eclipses as something as ominous as maybe some of the ancient cultures thought of them. Last month, August, was about revelation. What you saw, you couldn't unsee. And July was about power dynamics, and I asked y'all to think about what nourishes you in June. Well, this month, I feel like you're going to be standing at the doorway of the vision. Your vision that you probably, it looks very, very different than it did in January. And September is about whether you cross the threshold or if you decide to cling to what's obviously dissolving behind you. So I feel like the three words for this month are like threshold, reorientation, and then at the end of the month, more emergence. Now, for the astrological outlook, we've got a full moon, a lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 7th. It feels very veil thin like. The tide of the unconscious is going to be pulling us strong. It's, Pisces is a very watery sign. It carries memories and dreams and even ancestral grief to the surface. And what I feel like it's probably going to be a little overwhelming, and that might be in the collective, not just in the personal. And for many of us, when that happens, we feel that surge for control, and that is not the time for control. It's time for listening, to dream, to pay attention to symbols, to the body. Pisces teaches us what dissolves under this eclipse is going to be making space for some type of illumination later. So around that, which I'll say more as we get closer, we're going to need to let the waters blur the edges a little bit. And then we have a solar eclipse in Virgo at an anaretic degree, which is 29 degrees on September 21st. And when you have something at 29 degrees, it's the culmination of something. It's where a sign's lessons come due. So solar eclipses interrupt the sun, the source of vitality and and life and purpose. And at 29 degrees Virgo, I feel like there's going to be a sense of urgency that people will be feeling, especially going through all the rest of the gates leading up to that. I feel like it'll feel uncompromising comes to mind. And Virgo here is not about endless striving. It's like the razor's edge between discernment and depletion, right? Between refinement and control. And I think it's going to strip away what is out of obligation, what may be obsessive, what no longer serves. And coming out of that, I think you'll be a lot more in integrity. I think at the end of this month, integrity will reign. So, on September 1st, Saturn is going to retrograde back into Pisces. Now, Saturn spent a fair amount of time in Pisces, and then it entered into Aries, was it late May? And now it's returning to Pisces, and it's retrograde till February 2026, and it's wrapping up some business. So maybe something comes up for you that you thought was done in the house that you have Pisces in. But Saturn is the archetype of time and discipline, accountability, and in Pisces, it's a sign of Pisces is a sign of dreams and disillusion, and Saturn is going to drag us back through some of the murky places that we probably would rather bypass. Some of the maybe addictive loops that we have, some of the illusions that keep us comfortable but disconnected. Jung would call this the confrontation with the shadow, the reckoning that we've been avoiding in the waters of our psyche. And I think September marks Saturn's insistence that we can't float forever. Like, we gotta put some structure around things and see things for what they really are instead of what we might want them to be. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting there. But look what house Pisces is in your birth natal chart, and you will get some insight into what area of your life this is going to be affecting. And Mercury is entering in Virgo September 2nd, and Mercury in Virgo cuts with precision. It's revealing what's sloppy, what's leaky, what's unclear, and then on September 18th, it's moving into Libra because Mercury moves pretty fast, and it's going to be shifting the mind from an analysis to more balanced, conversations, relationships, contracts probably come through some sort of review to look at them to make sure they're not one-sided. And Mercury asks a question in Libra, can you hear another without losing your center? And I feel like this is going to be really important during this eclipse cycle, because this pivot is part of the reorientation that the eclipse season is going to demand, because I think that during this eclipse cycle and we're getting back to integrity, part of that is the analysis of, can I hear more than what's in my echo chamber? Meanwhile, Uranus is continuing to hum in the background, now retrograde in Gemini, shaking the ground under our feet a little bit. Uranus is the great destabilizer, the archetype of shock and innovation and sudden reversals. So we'll see what that brings. So if you feel a little unsettled or restless or you feel like you're standing on shifting soil a little bit, that's Uranus's vibe. But also during eclipse season, that might be a little bit more pronounced. So let's get into the human design gates sun transits. So September 1st through the 3rd, coming off of late August, gate 40, which is the gate of aloneness. And the gene keys, that gate is Shadow is exhaustion, gift is resolve, and the ascetic state is divine will. And September, I don't feel like starts off with a sprint. It starts off with like a little bit of more of a resolve. And, it's funny because I feel like when I was a kid, like September meant like you had to get serious because, summer was over, school was starting, and that's sort of the vibe of, I think, Gate 40. Gate 40 reminds us that we've got to, buckle down and figure out what matters. And it also reminds us that true connection isn't built on endless giving, because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And it's the archetype of the hermit, the one that steps back. So not to abandon everybody, but to sort of return with a little bit more energy, clarity about what you want to say yes to. And, in the gift in this particular gate is the clarity that comes when you let solitude strip away the noise and remember what you have the energy to actually stand behind. And, when Mercury's entering Virgo on the 2nd, I feel like it's going to sharpen that lens. Discernment's going to rise. What stays is what's really rooted in your will, not in obligation. And at the highest, this gate recognize when your yes is super aligned and in integrity. It's not just personal willpower. It's like a life itself moving through you. So a reflection during this time would be, what does solitude restore? Where does solitude restore your clarity rather than isolating you? Okay? And then we move to September 4th through 9th, and that will be Gate 64, the Gate of Confusion. And the gene keys for this is confusion is the shadow, imagination is the gift, and the ascetic state is illumination. And this is the gate that we will have during that Pisces Lunar Eclipse on September 7th. So, which I think is perfect because Pisces, I think, can be confusing, but what looks like confusion is actually the threshold to imagination. It dissolves our usual edges. It pulls us into this liminal space. The moon slipping into the shadow is not just an astronomical event. It's the unconscious breaking through the surface. It's bringing dreams into daylight, so to speak. And I think if we're looking at this from a union standpoint, it's the psyche insisting on wholeness, the images, symbols, synchronicities that rise up during this time. They're not random. The gate asks us to stop grasping at maybe answers that are not ripe, like a little premature, and allowing our imagination to run a little bit more wild, because it can be a bridge. It can be a bridge to a better answer, sharper clarity. And so during this time, I would say what symbols or dreams or synchronicities are asking for your attention as teachers. Then we move into September 10th through the 15th, Gate 47, which is the Gate of Realization. And during this time, we will see the gene keys, the shadow of oppression, and the gift of transmutation, and the city of transfiguration. And with Saturn moving like fully back into Pisces at this point, the collective weight of unfinished patterns is probably going to surface. And we will see this probably personally, and we'll probably see this collectively. Old loops, old stories, deja vu of some sort of residue of some old story that will remind us that we need to look at something head on, because if we do that, the heaviness won't feel like it's a trap. It will feel like it's raw material to be composted and dealt with. And the gift of this gate is transmutation. And, you know, despite popular belief, I don't believe that the psyche really wants endless analysis. I think it really wants an opportunity to alchemize something. You know, oppression becomes realization when we stop trying to think our way out of it, instead of allow what's heavy to be transmuted into gold, so to speak. And at the highest, this gate holds transfiguration, which is the moment that the story that you've carried sort of dissolves and something more luminous takes place. And I'm not saying this is comfortable. It's not. Often it comes with a lot of grief for maybe a situation you thought it was going to go one way and went another. It might be grief with letting people go, with having to step into a new version of yourself with a different level of courage. But the reward is seeing yourself in new eyes, right? And during this time, a reflection of what thought loop is asking to be alchemized rather than solved, right? So, you know, solving, I'm thinking like Band-Aids, right? You know, a lot of times we'll, put a Band-Aid over something, and sometimes we just have to take a radical step of transmuting that energy, right? You know, where's guilt and shame hidden behind that mask of responsibility and obligation? What identity is it dissolving? And what light may emerge if you just allow it, if you just had a little bit more courage? Then we move into September 16th and 20th, which is gate 6, which is the gate of friction. And gate 6 is the sort of the gate of emotional intimacy. And intimacy at some level always carries a measure of friction. It's where our edges meet another's. In eclipse season, I feel like those edges are going to be sharper. You know, what normally may be moved, what normally be smoothed over is going to probably feel more amplified and insisting on attention. During eclipse season, it's going to be a lot harder to ignore that. And, with Mercury moving into Libra, that's going to shift the tone of the conversation during this time. Here language becomes a threshold itself. Words can cut or words can reconcile. The gift of this gate is diplomacy, not performance, not appeasement, but the shadow work of naming truth in a way that relationships can hold it. And at its highest, gate 6 carries the city of peace, right? Not peace as avoidance, but peace as like a deeper level of intimacy that comes from honesty, comes from alignment, from clarity. That's the kind of peace that's only earned after you walk through conflict with integrity. And I think that during this time, a reflection might be, where might avoidance be masquerading as keeping the peace? What truth are you softening up for approval? And at what cost for connection? And how might friction itself be the initiator to a greater intimacy? Because, after a while, friction becomes, can lead to disassociation, and that puts a lot of distance between you and, could be you and yourself or you and another. Then September 21st to 26th, We are in gate 46, which is the determination of the self. And the gene keys for this are the shadows of seriousness, and the gift is delight, and the city is ecstasy. This is going to happen during our solar eclipse in Virgo. So this is a turning point of the month. Solar eclipses interrupt the very source of life, the sun, and for centuries they were feared as omens of power collapsing and thrones overturned and worlds reset. And psychologically, they ask us to release the outer roles and maybe the costumes. I'm at Dragon Con, so cosplay is a big thing right now. But releasing those costumes where we've been performing and let's get down to the essential. And I feel like gate 46 really makes this visceral because the body itself is a threshold. The shadow of seriousness, the weight of that, the striving, the duty, the proving, it's going to crumble under eclipse light. And what emerges, or what can emerge, is delight. A reminder that joy is not a distraction from purpose. On some level, it's the compass of purpose. And at the highest, this gate carries the city of ecstasy. And not indulgence, but like a soul fully in the body kind of ecstasy, free of pretense, And in the wake of this eclipse, the path forward won't be necessarily found in, to-do lists and strategy. It's going to be sensed through a real strong embodiment. And something that might be reflecting during this cycle is, what happens if you let your body and not your mind make the next decision? Really steep into your human design. What role or job or identity feels too tight to keep wearing? Could you think of delight more as a spiritual practice? And then we move to September 27th to 30th, gate 18, which is the gate of correction. I have gate 18. It is one of my prominent placements too. The month closes out here, and after all that you have been through in September at this point, the urge to critique will sharpen a little bit under this gate, and you've got the eclipse season's upheaval. It really is easy to look at yourself and others and see what's wrong, but I feel like, because I have, like I said, this gate in a real prominent place, the sting of this gate can be, expectations can be really devastating. When you demand flawlessness from yourself, from your work, from the people around you, the result is rarely growth. And a lot of times it's paralysis. And the invitation isn't to abandon discernment, but it shifts its aim a bit. And the gift of 18 is integrity. And I feel like that's a standard that refines without crushing. It names what's out of tune, but it doesn't confuse correction with condemning anyone. Integrity says, I'll keep working with this, not to meet an impossible expectation, but to honor what's true. And I think it also offers that opportunity to look at somebody else and give them grace. At the highest, this gate carries the city of perfection, but not perfection as in meeting every demand, but the recognition that even in imperfection, the pattern is still whole. I really think it has a lot to do with grace, and it's the kind of perfection that doesn't need to perform. So the invitation during this time might be where are your expectations setting you up for disappointment rather than possibility? how can, what becomes possible when you hold standards, but without making them cages. So again, we are wrapping up the 3 words: threshold, reorientation, emergence. And September is an initiation into the liminal space, because eclipses don't just mark time, they dissolve it. They pull the unconscious into daylight. And, Saturn's return to Pisces presses that unfinished weight of old patterns business back into your hands. And gates are going to be whispering realization, diplomacy, delight, integrity, and the work is not to tidy this up into, a little package with a bow, but to hold the tension of transformation. Let yourself reorient so something deeper can finally emerge, because this entire year is been about stripping away some old shit that has been ready to go, right? And I think the driving question this month is, when the light returns after the eclipse, what do you want still standing? So that's it for today. September isn't just transit talk, it's a threshold month. The eclipses and Saturn's return to Pisces and the Mercury changing gates and signs and the gates that we walk through. It's all of it is pressing on you to resolve and illuminate and a different level of integrity, all in real time. So the eclipses don't just move the sky, they move us. So if you're ready to step into a deeper conversation and look at what's actually emerging through the lens of your chart, this is work we can do together. Sessions are open for September, Kairos sessions when you need like that short, very pointed guidance. A human design reading where we can really go deeper into your blueprint, and shamanic healing sessions for that old wound that just won't let go. So each is a different type of doorway. So I will look forward to connecting with you next week. In the interim, remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. Thanks for tuning in today. As always, take what resonates, leave the rest. Let whatever landed move through you in whatever way it needs to or wants to. And also, if you want to explore more, you'll find more information in the show notes. If this episode stirred something in you, please share it out or leave a quick review. It helps so much and I really appreciate it. And remember, this work is about integration, and it always starts with self-trust.